Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another book review on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we're going to take a look at a pretty new book on the market. This is called Paul Mauser, His Life, Company, and Handgun Development, 1838 through 1914, written cooperatively by two European authors, Mauro Baudino and Gerben von Vlimmeren. I apologize if I messed up your guys' names. This is really kind of an advanced level reference book for serious Mauser enthusiasts, which isn't quite what I was expecting when I first saw the cover and heard about the book. One might expect with a book like this, we're going to get this cool background history to the Mauser C96 pistol, which, to be honest, is something that really ought to be out there. Most of the books on the C96 are kind of old and pre-internet, and thus I think there's really an opening for a newer and better and all-encompassing book on the C96 Mauser. However, this is not it. Instead, this is the result of years, I believe, of work of the two authors and some other people. Guys like John Speed were involved in this or helped procure material for it. This is looking through the Mauser Archives and basically seeing what cool stuff is there in the Mauser Archives that nobody's figured out yet, or that nobody's recognized yet. Because the Mauser Archives are not quite as, well, they're not as organized as you would maybe expect for a German archive. The Mauser Archives is kind of an all-encompassing term for the collection of both Mauser corporate documents and Paul Mauser's personal documents. And it wasn't really put together with the intention of being a formal research archive. It was just like the stuff that was around that people managed to collect together. So Paul Mauser liked to take notes on whatever paper was handy at the time. He'd write notes on his work or on his day's schedule on the back of receipts, other letters. It's not a well-organized thing, and it took many years for the authors to really analyze and understand what was being discussed. A lot of these notes in the archive are short. They're not, like I said, they're not meant to be a reference thing. It's Paul Mauser going, oh, I need to remember that I talked about the new safety design with such and such yesterday, so we'll scribble down a little note, discuss new safety design May 14th. Things like that. However, once you have a good deep understanding of the Mauser company and the Mauser pistols and the known history, then you can start digging into those archives and recognize new information that would be inscrutable to most people. And that's what this book is. This is 550 pages of, here's the cool stuff we found in the Mauser archive that nobody knew about before. And so for that reason, it's not really a good introduction to Mauser pistols. I would strongly recommend finding some other references, learning about the C96 in particular, but also the Mauser rifles, because that's a large part of Mauser's history and development before the C96, the 1891 or the 1871 Mauser, the 7184, and then the series of magazine-fed or box magazine-fed Mauser bolt actions. This does also cover Mauser's C77 single-shot pistol, their 1878 revolvers that didn't quite manage to get adopted as in place of the German Reichsrevolver. Going into this book, I think it would definitely benefit you to have some understanding of all of those guns, because the more you know about Mauser to begin with, the more you will actually get out of this book. But that being said, once you know something about the guns, there's a ton of really interesting stuff in here. So one major thing that the archive is able to provide that other literature doesn't is information about canceled contracts. Because if the contracts were canceled, well, the guns didn't typically show up in the market anywhere. They're not out there in collectors' hands. There's very little information about them. They're not going to be in any of the reference books. The only place that they're still known is through what Mauser originally wrote about them. And so we have things like the Mexican contract for C96 Mauser pistols, which would have been the biggest single national contract. Mexico ordered 50,000 C96s, but then the order fell apart with the Mexican Revolution. So information about that, there's a lot of information in here about, some of the orders that did go through, the Persian orders, the Turkish orders, small as they may be, the Italian, the first major military C96 order, the Italian Navy ordered 5,000 Mauser pistols. all of these things are in there, and with just really cool anecdotes that you won't find in other places. For example, there's some cool information in there that brings up a lot of questions about the relationship between Theodore Bergman and Paul Mauser. I'll leave that for people who want to dig into the book. One other cool anecdote that I found funny and interesting. After World War I, the Versailles Treaty limited German production of firearms, of course, and it wasn't actually until 1922 that the Inter-Allied Military Control Commission managed to get an inspector to Mauser Oberndorf to check up on what they were doing. So until 1921, Mauser was perfectly happy to be building and selling pistols that would actually come under the control of the Versailles Treaty. And they continued to do it after the inspector arrived. It turned out the inspector that was sent only inspected the sales logbooks. He never actually bothered to check what the guns were in inventory, and he didn't even look at the production logbooks. So the way that this worked is a Mauser 96 in 7.63 millimeter was considered a legal gun for Germany to be making and selling. It was pistols in 9 parabellum that were considered military hardware and prohibited. So what Mauser did was they decided, well, obviously, we won't call this the Model 96 pistol, we will call this the pistol 7.63 millimeter, and in the production books it was pistol 7.63 millimeter, and then the caliber, which might be 7.63 or might be 9. However, when they got to the actual sales logs, the caliber column just kind of was conveniently lost and set aside. And so the inspector, looking through the sales books, all he saw was pistol 7.63. Fantastic. They're all legal. Go about your business. Have a good time. This did lead to Mauser shipping people 9mm pistols, kind of with a note in the box saying, yes, we know that the invoice says 7.63mm, but don't worry, they're actually 9mm guns. We're doing this to avoid international issues. And for this reason, 9mm C96 broom handle production continued into the 141,000 serial number range, well beyond what was finished at the end of World War I, guns that were legally not allowed to be made and shipped, but Mauser had this just creative bookkeeping that allowed them to sneak past the Inter-Allied Military Control Commission. That's the sort of information that you get out of the Mauser Archive and is in this book. So just once you're interested in the guns, there's so much information in here. It's really cool. Few other things. There's a lot of discussion of the relationship between Paul and Wilhelm Mauser, which is something that's not heavily discussed elsewhere. Wilhelm Mauser died much earlier than Paul, and so there's a lot of debate about who really had the who gets the credit for the original Mauser 71 bolt action system. What was the division of work between the two? And there's a lot of information about that in here. Also, Paul Mauser's personal life, his civil life. He was a member of the German Reichstag. I think he was always called the Reichstag, the parliament. His relationship to the church, his charitable organizations and contributions. A lot of bibliographical material is in here because, of course, it was in his personal papers. And then this goes into a little bit past Mauser's death, and it goes into the Mauser pocket pistols, the 1910/14/34 pistols, and the 9mm version thereof that they worked on developing. Now, there are a couple downsides to the book. One thing that was a little bit unfortunate to me was that experimental self-loading rifles were not really covered in depth. They're mentioned, but the authors are, self-admittedly, very much experts on Mauser handguns more than rifles. And so the rifles kind of get short shrift in the book. Also, to me, some of the aesthetic editing of the book left a little bit to be desired. It's a very simplistic layout. You have one large column of text all the way down each page, and when there are photos, they are inserted in the text. It kind of looks like an MS Office document. That's not to take anything away from the quality of the work, certainly not the quality of the research. It's just the publisher, I think, could have done a little more to spice up the look of the book. It doesn't really quite have that look that you would expect from something like collector grade, with a little more varied presentation of pictures and text. That said, that's the worst I can say about this book. I think it is anyone who's seriously interested in Mauser, his life, and his engineering work, and his pistols in particular, you really ought to have a copy of this. Now, if you're not seriously interested, if you don't really care how Mauser lived his personal life, or you don't really care about the details of canceled pistol contracts, or alternative safety designs that didn't end up getting adopted, well, then this isn't the book for you. But if that's what you're interested in, as I certainly am, then this definitely is the book for you. Price on this is $90 from the publisher. You can get it through Simpson Limited here in the United States. I believe in Europe, the best way to go about it would be to contact the authors through their website, lugerlpo8.com. I'll have links to both of those in the description below. And I'm sure it will show up on Amazon. It doesn't appear to be distributed directly to Amazon by the publisher, but like I said, I'm sure it'll show up there. So if there is a copy on Amazon, I'll put a link to that because I know some people prefer Amazon. Anyway, a very cool expansion of the known understanding of a lot of these, well, lesser known subjects about Mauser. So thanks for watching, guys. Tune back in next week to another book review on ForgottenWeapons.com.